Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the 5 cars I've owned in over 4 years. So everyone's going to be asking, why did you own 5 cars in over 4 years? And I would answer, well, as a borderline Gen Z, missed the cutoff to be a true millennial and making bad decisions, perhaps. Or perhaps it's a story worth telling. So in this video we're going to be talking about that story of why I owned 5 different cars, and that's the key word. I owned 5 different cars. If you're new here, welcome. My name's Dave, and I like cars so much that I've owned 5 different cars in over 4 years. And on this channel we talk all things related to my 2022 Audi S4, as well as some other cars. This Lariat is very nice. Let me pop the trunk. Oh, we actually just spun out the wheels there. If this is something that interests you, please consider subscribing. It's free, easy, just takes one click. Now, on to the video, and I hope you enjoy. You know, a little backstory, when you graduate college and stuff, and you're in your 20s, there's a lot of figuring things out. Figuring out your first job, moving to a new place up in New Hampshire, kind of, figuring out who I want to spend time with, things I wanted to do after work. Did I want to sit and watch Netflix? Did I want to work out? Did I like cooking? Did I not like cooking? Those are all the things you kind of figure out. But also, your job takes up most of your life. What are you doing when you're not working? When you're not existing as a human? When you're not feeding, sleeping, etc.? What are things that you're interested in? And that's kind of something I've been figuring out ever since I graduated and I switched jobs and I moved to a new area and I owned 5 different cars. So let's start with the first car. I owned a 2016 Subaru Forester. It was like the base model. It was a white car. I don't have any pictures of it, so I'm sorry. And that was like kind of that was Dave as a car person. It was my first car from my family, from my parents, and yeah, so I was very lucky to have that car. And when I owned that car, I took it through college, up and down to Massachusetts from New Jersey. I would drive it to our rowing practice. So it didn't really see a typical commute style until I graduated. And I probably commuted in that car for about 6 months because if you can do the math, I graduated in June 2019, May 2019, and 6 months after that was COVID, pretty much 6 to 8 months, give or take. So I didn't really have the 9 to 5 commuting lifestyle for too long in that car. Subaru Forester, super reliable, super boring, A to B car. I was a total A to B person. I never understood at the time why people would get fancy cars and depreciating assets when they could be, investing their money, or nobody cares what you're driving as long as it gets you to point A and B, and I'm going to drive this Subaru Forester until the wheels fall off. And that didn't happen. So, the reason the Subaru Forester went the way of the dinosaurs to me was that during the pandemic and during the lockdowns when we were not really able to do much, I was pretty bored at work, mostly because my job was a boring engineering desk job and it wasn't keeping me very busy. So I did what any millennial Gen Zer was, and I went to social media and I went to YouTube and I started going down the rabbit hole of electric cars. I went down the rabbit hole of YouTube and I was super into electric cars. And there's a whole section of my YouTube where I talk about the different electric cars I was interested in, but ultimately settled on the staple Tesla Model 3 long-range all-wheel drive. So I got that in June 2020, and that was the beginning of Dave's interest in cars. And what I really liked about that car is just kind of what draws people to electric cars in the beginning: the smooth acceleration, the simplicity of filling up the car, the simplicity of maintenance, and I shouldn't say simplicity of filling up the car, but just the idea that you can plug a car into the same outlet as your iPhone just baffled me. I thought that was so cool. So I was just really interested into it as a new technology, because as an engineer, you're always interested in new technologies, the next generation product, etc. because engineers not only design things, but they also innovate things. Tesla Model 3, I owned it from June 2020 to, I think it was about January of 2022. So I owned it for about 2 years, took it on many road trips, really pushed the charging network of Tesla. I drove all the way out to the eastern part of Maine and all the way over to the White Mountains from New Jersey and then back. And all I did was just plug in the next destination, and it led me to supercharges. There was a lot of stopping for sure, but for short charges. But it was super cool to experience that. I had no issues with the car other than just needing new tires, because those things roast the tires, especially because I was a red light warrior. So why did I get rid of the Tesla? Well, if everyone knows how the car market was in the early 2022, electric cars, but used cars in general, were really seeing high resale values. I was kind of looking at the Tesla like I was going to own it until the wheels fall off. But then I just started having some issues with the ride quality. It's an extremely heavy car compared to a normal sedan or my Subaru Forester, and the suspension was very sport tuned, but also not as refined as something like this or other cars, as I come to find out. So I started looking. I looked at like the ID4, the Mach-E, all the other electric cars, because I didn't want to go back to gas. I was like a snob about it. So between the ride quality dislikes of my Tesla Model 3, again 2020 model, so they hadn't really refined their suspension yet. Allegedly it's improved since I owned it. I started looking at the Mustang Mach-E, and I really, really liked the Mach-E. It felt just as cutting edge as the Tesla, but it was sleek. I know it was an SUV, and I know it's not a true Mustang. I know that now, as a car enthusiast now. But it also qualified for the $7,500 tax credit. So I sold my Tesla for exactly what I paid for, which is about $46,000 at the time. And I sold it for that much, so that was awesome. And then I got the tax credit on the Mach-E, which I was able to get at MSRP. So effectively, I owned a car for 2 years, 30,000 miles, very low cost aside from owning the car. And I got into a new electric car and got a $7,500 tax credit. I think the Mach-E went for about $56,000, so a little bit more pricey, but nicer inside. Heated steering wheel was nice, bigger infotainment, center gauge cluster, more comfortable ride, better range because it had a larger battery, not as fast as charging. But at this point I was in New Jersey. I wasn't really taking many long road trips. I was actually doing a lot of stop and go. So the Mach-E was pretty efficient. So anyways, owned the Mach-E for about a couple months. And that was because I had just, decided I was gonna go move to an apartment in Hoboken, Jersey City. And I was worried about, making sure my finances made sense. I could afford the Mustang, especially from how much equity I got from the Tesla, but the monthly payments are a little higher and yada, yada, yada. So I went on a huge tirade of looking at econo cars, because I was like, I'm sick of, the fast cars and, all the electric cars, just, they zoom off the line, and I'm not really taking advantage of it because I'm not an aggressive driver, etc., etc. I was looking at Corollas, Accords, Civics, you name it, Elantras. It was, the budget of the budget and stuff. And, every time I drove one of them, I liked it on the price tag, but then I was like, you know what, these dealers are not giving you any deals, and they're charging over MSRP for used cars, or over they're not really budging on these high-end car, or these budget level cars, and it was pushing me into like the $40,000 range. So I was like, why don't I look at like used luxury cars? And I ended on the Volvo S60. I loved it. I loved the interior. I was always a big fan of Polestar, so driving a Volvo kind of felt like I was driving, even though it's like different generation and the Polestar was more high tech, I really liked the Volvo interior. It was so elegant, so nice. It had the T6 engine, so supercharged, turbocharged, 4-cylinder, made about 300 horsepower, all-wheel drive, and it pulled. It was, it wasn't the sportiest of cars, but it pulled in a straight line, and it had good looks. It was a sedan. It was pretty efficient. not the most efficient, but it was also, I didn't want to do a BMW, I didn't want to do an Audi, I really hadn't looked at Acuras and Lexuses because I didn't really know much about them. That's like kind of the gist of the story. So I started to learn more about the car market overall. It wasn't just Ford electric cars, Tesla electric cars, and everyone else is inferior. So I sold the Ford. I was able to sell it for about like 52, 53 for a trade-in with the towards the Volvo. I didn't have a lot of equity in the Ford because I put little money down, hence why the payments are so high and why I wasn't super comfortable. I took more of the cash and kept it for myself because I wanted to plan for like a house and all that stuff. Still got the tax credit for the Ford, which obviously wouldn't come through until this year and my tax return for 2022. But so when I ran the numbers, I pretty much profited about a couple of grand on the Mach-E because there was very little sales tax on the trade-in buying the Volvo because of the equity and the value of the Ford going down to like a $36,000 certified pre-owned 2019 Volvo S60. I was also able to get the top trim, get some warranty and all of that. So I think I did pretty well in terms of having a nice car that was a couple years old and, you know, still had the features I needed: adaptive cruise control, lane centering, CarPlay, etc. I love the Volvo. No sales tax on the trade-in for the Volvo when I purchased it. No sales tax on the Mustang because in New Jersey they don't tax electric cars. And when I bought the Tesla, no sales tax on the Tesla because I bought it in New Hampshire. I did a calculation at some point, I probably could flash it up on the screen. My total cost of ownership on cars was positive going into the Volvo, despite owning 3 cars in over 2 years. And 4 cars technically if you count the Subaru. So I was doing pretty well for myself. So I was pretty, you know, lucky with the whole used car market and my current, you know, financial situation with my job and having low expenses, and just being a little bit savvy with money, but also, you know, just having that luxury of being able to go to college, get a good job, very little student debt. But I digress. We're talking cars here. So I got the Volvo S60 in April 2022, drove on a road trip to Myrtle Beach to see my friends, so really got to experience it and really liked the car. It was weird going to the gas station, especially at that time when fuel prices were absurdly high. Paying $5 and plus cents to fill up a premium car after owning an electric car when I barely paid electric was pretty painful, but my monthly payments were lower, total cost of ownership was lower, and then I just started getting interested in you know, combustion vehicles. I never really experienced combustion vehicles because I drove a boring Subaru Forester, and I was like cold turkey after that with electric cars. I started learning all about the other brands and like found some YouTube channels, started watching their reviews, started learning about, you know, Mustang V8s, hybridization, the direction that manufacturers have to go. I just, you know, I learned about every aspect: dealership networks, drivetrain differences, cylinder count differences, V6s, V4 or inline 4s, V8s, everything, turbochargers versus superchargers. I just really got into everything, manuals versus automatics. I go on dual clutch. What's a dual clutch? Didn't know what that was. Now I do, kind of. So I just really started getting down the rabbit hole after owning that Volvo for only a couple months. I just, you know, I started was like really just liked, you know, what gas cars were, and feel like I had missed out on a whole experience and got into it at the wrong time because everything's moving electric, everything's hybridizing, everything's smaller displacement, turbocharging, everything's going SUVs like this GLS 450, which probably has a 4-cylinder in it anyways. I have more displacement than you, I bet. I'm just kidding. I probably don't. But you know, so I had been paying off my car pretty rapidly because I didn't want to be in debt, even though at that time interest rates were super low. I think I had like a 2.9%, so pretty nice to nowadays standards. Then in like August 2022, I started test driving some other cars, Lexus IS 350, Kia Stinger, which test driving the Kia Stinger was awesome. I to this day still love the Kia Stinger. Ooh, that was a Camaro. That was an Camaro. To this day, I still love the Kia Stinger. The practicality, the uniqueness of it. and just, you know, the fact that it is discontinued shows exactly where the car market is going. A twin turbo V6 in a mainstream sportback sedan is now no longer here, and now they're probably trying to replace it with the EV6, a sportback crossover SUV that absolutely rips. Never driven one, but it's electric. Character is just totally different. So love the Kia Stinger, really wanted one, but I was like, I can't do this again. Everyone's gonna think I'm a nut job and all of that. So continued to test drive cars. IS500 came in at one point, we'll get to that. Acura TLX Type S. I was looking at every sports sedan. Genesis G70, Audi S4, hello, Audi S5, Audi S3, brand new. Gosh, what else was there? The BMW M340i. I threw in an Audi Q5 plug-in hybrid, as just, you know, for random reasons. SQ5. So many different sporty sedans that weren't like the high-end performance, like, you know, S models versus an RS, for example. Didn't really look at the mainstream because everything in the mainstream is either a hybrid, a dinky little 4-cylinder, and I didn't know how to drive manual, and I didn't want a coupe, so I didn't look at Mustangs or anything. So I looked all over the place. And then that brings you to February 2022, where I bought the Audi S4, and that was the 5th car I owned in 4 years. Ultimately, what I settled on the Audi wasn't really like, you know, a could go wrong decision. I was stuck between this, the Kia Stinger. I actually took all of a Saturday and got up, drove to an Acura in Princeton for 9 a.m., drove the TLX Type S, drove 2 hours west to a Kia Stinger GT2 out in Pennsylvania, and drove that, and then drove all the way down to an Audi in South Jersey, where I drove this car and another S3 as well. And ultimately, I'll do a whole separate video. Ultimately, I went with this car because I just felt like it was the best deal, and I was right around that $50,000 price range between the Stinger, the TLX, and the S4, which is kind of crazy. This is certified pre-owned, so yeah. So ultimately, that's what brought me to the Audi S4. And yes, I owned 5 cars in 4 years, and I'm not gonna, you know, go into financials, but I'm still doing perfectly fine. I will end this video off that when I graduated, I had to pay rent, I had to pay some student loans, but I didn't have to pay a car payment. And I just, you know, I started doing research on what's a 401k, what are credit cards doing, what do you save for, how to budget, etc. And I just really focused in, because my first job was so boring, that instead of watching cat videos all day, I chose to learn about finances. And I feel like that has benefited me because I hit the ground running in terms of saving, not, you know, buying takeout all the time, learning to cook more, you know, learning to buy cheaper clothes from like TJ Maxx versus going to nice places. Like cars are my thing, and food is my thing, but that's it. You know, I worked out at home. I went to cheap gyms like Planet Fitness. I did go to Orange Theory, but I worked out almost every day. So anything I ever spent money on was always worth it, except, you know, in terms of a financial calculation, I always maximize my spend, except for cars. But now cars have become something I'm so interested in. I love working on this car, even if it's simple oil changes. I love looking at cars on the road. I'm looking at all these cars right now, not very impressed because they're all crossovers that I personally wouldn't buy. There's a Pathfinder, Nicole buy that. I look at cars all around. I still watch car YouTube videos to this day. I want an IS500. It is literally, an IS500 engine is literally the background on my phone screen. I want an IS500. I love cars. I'm a gearhead. Bite me. No, but in all seriousness, it's like, this is my thing. This is my, you know, my interest. I'm trying to make a YouTube channel out of it. And, you know, the whole point of this video is to kind of explain that, but also just kind of give a little personal touch to why did I go crazy with buying cars. Not everyone's going to agree. People are fine with their Priuses and their, you know, their Corollas. Not that I don't like those cars. There's a place for them. There's a place for any car. And it really boils down to what you care about more in your life and what you care about other people. That's you know, going back and summarizing this video, besides you know, talking about what my vice is, cars, is also I learned to stop caring what other people think. I learned to stop caring about you know, what other people thought about my decisions as, you know, as a person with money, or just anyone. You know, money is such a dividing factor, and cars are reflective on that, especially if you're purchasing cars all the time. People think you're, you know, you're going into debt like crazy. You're never going to get ahead in life. Like, don't tell anyone what to do when it comes to spending their own money if it's not your place. If it's not your significant other, it's not your kid, stay out of their life. I'm going to get into a whole rant about this. So the 5 cars in the 4 years, hope everyone enjoyed my explanation. I have a lot of editing to do to get rid of my rant. But if you like the video, please consider subscribing and giving it a thumbs up and really push it to some audience who's curious what the 26-year-old is doing buying multiple cars. And tune in to the next couple of videos. I, you know, hope everyone enjoyed this video, and I appreciate all the support. And I'll see you on the next one.